We'll take a few questions. We're going to also have questions specifically for the Baltics. Steve? Reuters.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some of your military advisors are urging you to keep a contingent of U.S. troops in Syria to ensure the defeat of ISIS. What is your current thinking on this subject? Do you still want them out? And secondly, could you clarify what you meant about having the U.S. military guard the U.S. border along with Mexico? Thank you, sir.
Yeah. First of all, the border. The Mexican border is very unprotected by our laws. We have horrible, horrible and very unsafe laws in the United States, and we're going to be able to do something about that hopefully soon. Hopefully Congress will get their act together and get in and create some very powerful laws like Mexico has and like Canada has and like almost all countries have. We don't have laws. We have catch and release. You catch and then you immediately release, and people come back years later for a court case, except they virtually never come back. So we are preparing for the military to secure our border between Mexico and the United States. We have a meeting on it in a little while with General Mattis and everybody, and I think that it's something we have to do. Now, the caravan, which is over 1,000 people coming in from Honduras, thought they were going to just walk right through Mexico and right through the border. As you know, NAFTA is a phenomenal deal for Mexico. It's been a horrible deal for the United States. We're renegotiating it now. But it has been a horrible, horrible, embarrassing deal for the United States. This should have been terminated or renegotiated many years ago. Mexico, we have a trade deficit with Mexico of over $100 billion a year. And I told Mexico yesterday that because of the fact that their laws are so strong, they can do things about it that hard to believe the United States can't. I said, I hope you're going to tell that caravan not to get up to the border. And I think they're doing that because as of 12 minutes ago, it was all being broken up. We'll see what happens. But we have to have strong borders. We need the wall. We've started building the wall. As you know, we have $1.6 billion toward building the wall and fixing existing wall that's falling down or was never appropriate in the first place. And that's very important. As far as Syria is concerned, our primary mission in terms of that was getting rid of ISIS. We've almost completed that task, and we'll be making a decision very quickly in coordination with others in the area as to what we'll do. Saudi Arabia is very interested in our decision. And I said, well, you know, you want us to say maybe you're going to have to pay. But a lot of people, you know, we do a lot of things in this country. We do them for a lot of reasons, but it's very costly for our country, and it helps other countries a hell of a lot more than it helps us. So we're going to be making a decision. We've had a tremendous military success against ISIS, as you know. It's close to 100%, as I just said. And we'll be making a decision as to what we do in the very near future. We'll be consulting also with groups of our people and groups of our allies. Okay?
So you're inclined to pull the troops out?
Say it?
You're inclined to pull the troops out?
I want to get out. I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start rebuilding our nation. We will have, as of 3 months ago, $7 trillion in the Middle East over the last 17 years. We get nothing out of it, nothing. And as you remember, in civilian life, for years, I said, keep the oil. I was always saying, keep the oil. We didn't keep the oil. Who got the oil was ISIS got the oil, a lot of it. That's what funded their campaigns. They took a lot of the oil, and it was largely responsible for funding. We should have kept the oil then. We didn't keep the oil. So I want to get back. I want to rebuild our nation. Think of it, $7 trillion over a 17-year period. We have nothing except death and destruction. It's a horrible thing. So it's time. It's time. We were very successful against ISIS. We'll be successful against anybody militarily. But sometimes it's time to come back home. And we're thinking about that very seriously. Okay? Thank you.
We start at the White House, where they're in increasing bluster from President Trump about a caravan of around 1,000 to 1,500 immigrants from Central America, the group traveling through Mexico toward the U.S. border, and the president says it must be stopped. He's considering using the U.S. military, he says, along the southern border to do it. This occurs as new concerns grow about U.S. troop commitment in Syria and a possible trade war with China. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts starts us off tonight from the North Lawn on the Politics News. John?
Brad, good evening to you. President Trump still insists that the best way to secure our southern border is with a massive wall. But in the absence of a wall, President Trump today floated another controversial idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
President Trump today gave no details or would say if U.S. troops would be involved. But meeting with Baltic leaders today, he revealed he wants the U.S. military guarding the southern border.
Been speaking with General Mattis. We're going to be doing things militarily. Until we can have a wall and proper security, we're going to be guarding our border with the military. That's a big step. We really haven't done that before.
Officials say the White House counsel's office has been looking into the legal aspects of putting the military along the border. The National Guard has been used several times to assist the Border Patrol, and in the early 90s, a military joint task force was on the border for counter-narcotics and counter-terrorism. While a plan has yet to be formulated, just the idea drew a sharp response from former Mexican President Vicente Fox, who tweeted, "Demilitarize the southern border is to provoke more hate and distance even further our nations. Somebody has to talk some sense into him. He's elevating his hate toward Mexico, causing a greater conflict." President Trump claimed victory today in his public pressure Twitter campaign to have Mexico stop the caravan of Central American migrants traveling to the U.S. border. The president had gone so far as to threaten NAFTA if Mexico didn't do something.
I told Mexico very strongly, you're going to have to do something about these caravans, and they have to do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to do the NAFTA deal. NAFTA's been fantastic for Mexico, bad for us.
The group that organized the caravan, Pueblos Sin Fronteras, People Without Borders, criticized the president for demonizing an annual event they claim is a humanitarian mission.
Migrants should not be abandoned because of some tweets and political hate. It's very characteristic of Donald Trump to govern via tweets.
While President Trump is seeking an expanded role for the military in defending the border, he is looking at shrinking the U.S. profile in Syria.
It's time. It's time. We were very successful against ISIS. We'll be successful against anybody militarily. But sometimes it's time to come back home. And we're thinking about that very seriously. Okay?
But even the president's own advisors say the U.S. needs to stay in Syria for the foreseeable future.
We are in Syria to fight ISIS. That is our mission, and that mission isn't over, and we're going to complete that mission.
Experts worry a U.S. pullout could lead to a resurgence of ISIS and remove a counterweight to Russian influence in Syria. Today, President Trump was asked about his relationship with Vladimir Putin, whether he saw him as an enemy or friend.
I think I could have a very good relationship with Russia and with President Putin. And if I did, that would be a great thing. And there's also a great possibility that that won't happen. Who knows?
And the president dismissed the notion he isn't tough on Russia, pointing to his recent order to expel 60 Russian diplomats in the U.S.
So there are many things that I've done, and not only the 60 diplomats. Germany did 4, France did 4, we did 60. There's nobody been tougher on Russia.
On whether U.S. troops should stay in Syria, President Trump today revealed that in his March 20th meetings with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, President Trump told Salman if Saudi Arabia wants U.S. troops to stay in Syria to stabilize the situation, well, maybe they should pick up the tab. Brett?
How that would work is really the question. John, thank you.
Republicans in Congress refused to fund a wall, so the president announced today that he plans to send the military to guard America's border with Mexico. The announcement was sparked by a convoy of more than 1,000 Central Americans that has been making its way through Mexico toward this country. Mexico's government claimed on Monday to have broken up the convoy and deported 400 people in it. But the people who are actually running that convoy say otherwise. One of them told BuzzFeed, quote, "Don't be fooled. The government isn't disbanding it. It's conceding its participants' right to apply for asylum without traveling in the shadows." Either way, we have no reason to trust the good intentions of the Mexican government. In 2017, the Mexican Foreign Ministry published a video encouraging Mexican citizens to break American immigration law. It advised them not to open their doors to federal authority. It told them to hide the fact they're there illegally. And it was not the first time the Mexican government has done this. In 2004, the government printed and distributed more than 1.5 million pamphlets telling Mexicans how to enter this country illegally and live here without being detained. It even had tips on what clothes to wear while crossing a river, presumably the Rio Grande. Recently, Mexico filed an amicus brief protesting Texas's anti-sanctuary city bill. The Mexican foreign minister has called for illegal aliens in this country to receive legal status and has denounced the border wall as, quote, a hostile act. Hostile? Mexico is the hostile power here. Just today, former Mexican President Vicente Fox tweeted that Donald Trump is, quote, enemy number one of Mexico. He then retweeted someone else who suggested that if a dispute does happen, Trump will, quote, probably give back the state of California. The implication, of course, is that Mexico really owns California. In a 2017 poll, 65% of Mexicans said they viewed the United States unfavorably. 42% viewed America very unfavorably. None of this should be confusing or a surprise. Rather than fix its own problems, which are serious, the Mexican government instead imports them north to this country. It gets angry if we even hinder that process in any way. Mexico is, in fact, using the United States as an outlet for its poor. It's using our government as its welfare system. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein said that out loud back in 1993. She wouldn't say it today, but it's still true. Mexicans in this country sent home more than $26 billion in the first 11 months of 2017, the highest amount ever. Remittances are one of that country's biggest sources of foreign cash, bigger even than oil exports, and that's saying a lot. The Mexican government is a corrupt kleptocracy whose economy is based on oil, drugs, and remittances sent from its functional northern neighbor. That would be us. It's one of the most unequal and racially biased countries in the world. And yet somehow our mindless, guilt-ridden media say it is racist to criticize the government of Mexico, which, again, is a racist government, run, by the way, by an overwhelmingly white elite that went to American Ivy League schools. This is insane. Mexico isn't sacred. It's a country, good and bad. But for the purposes of this conversation, it is a hostile foreign power whose interests are very different from ours, and we should treat it as such because it is.